Morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We're looking forward to our discussion regarding the impact on organizations due to the global pandemic. Our topics include technology, culture, engagement, hiring, and onboarding. My name is Len Curran, and I'm with Kranz Consulting. Kranz provides outsourced accounting and CFO services for startups. Additionally, we offer fund administration to venture capital funds. We also provide NetSuite implementation and technical accounting. In the last several years, we have supported over 1,000 startups from seed through exit. Kranz has been in business for over 25 years. Today's event is co-sponsored with Insperity. Insperity offers a full-service HR solution to help you increase efficiencies and effectively manage your employees. I am pleased to co-host this event with Candace Morton from Insperity. We are thrilled to have an expert panel to discuss our current working environment. Barring the impact of the recent information surrounding the vaccine, most likely we will be in this current environment for some time. Our panelists include Ron Storn, Chief People Officer, Keep Trucking, Cal Sonawala, CEO of Elevate 360, Eric Shoup, CEO, Peerspace, Dan Udoutch, CEO, R Squared, Jill Chapman, Senior Performance Consultant in Insperity, and certainly last but not least, Andrea Tiller, CFO from Kranz Consulting. Andrea oversees our emerging growth practice, including CFO advisory and outsourced accounting. This webinar is jam-packed with great tools and information for both small and large companies managing their workforce during these unprecedented times. Our webinar today is broken up into two sections. Candace will discuss with Dan and Andrea the impact of technology, onboarding, and culture. And at the 30-minute mark, Candace will hand it back to me and the other panelists, and we'll dive into topics centered around our new geo-remote workforce, remote employee engagement, and motivation and hiring. We will have time at the end of our discussion for Q&A, but please feel free to use the chat function to submit questions throughout the webinar. Without further ado, Candace, take it away.
Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you so much, Len, for that. I also want to thank Kranz and Insperity for allowing me to channel my inner Oprah. I've always wanted to be a talk show host, so I just want to say thank you. Also want to thank you to anybody on the call who is a veteran, and thank them for their service. I come from a family and a history of military service, so I just want to say Happy Veterans Day to all of you. So I have the honor of speaking with two really fascinating people today. Andrea Tiller from Kranz, leading CFO of their emerging growth practice. Some of the highlights of her career are a 5-year strategic plan for Peet's Coffee that brought them to $1 billion in revenue, and a company called Smite, sale to Twitter. So she is best known for her innovation, strategic planning, collaboration, ethics, and team building. And then Dan Udoutch, who's a passionate CEO and multi-industry leader who has brought multiple successful technology innovations to market. Dan has a deep experience in enterprise sales, marketing, professional services, and partnerships, and has led organizations ranging from startups to enterprises with annual revenues of $250 million or more. So welcome, Andrea and Dan. Thank you for being here. So let's start off with the first question. Here at Insperity, we provide technology that makes both the company and the employee more efficient. And so I'm wondering how your solutions integrate with your clients and improve their situations, especially now in this current virtual environment, and what you think is going to stay with us long term, even after this pandemic is over.
It's a really fascinating question, and thank you for the opportunity to participate today. Something that I'm not sure everybody on the call is aware of is that what we're experiencing today is not necessarily totally separated from where we were a year to 5 years ago. It's actually an acceleration of trends that were already taking place in various parts of the country and the world. And a good example of that is, prior to the pandemic, up to 40% of people in the San Francisco Bay Area worked contract or flex time or gig or some form other than permanent roles. And so it also comes back to something that we in the industry have been talking about for even longer than that, which is this concept of people, processes, and technology. So what's been in place coming up till this point, I think, is how processes and particularly technology have enabled the ability to work remotely in a way that wouldn't have been possible 5 years ago. But the other thing that's emerging from this situation is that that isn't always what works best for the people. There are pluses to it. I don't miss my 3-hour commute every day. I don't miss getting into my suits every day as opposed to my comfy clothes. But for a lot of employees and for a lot of companies, while we can deal with the technical issues with the processes we bring in place and the technology, it is very difficult to replicate the psychological and emotional needs of our customers and of our employees in a purely technological remote way.
Yeah. How about you, Dan?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I absolutely agree with your worldview there, Andrea, whether it's gig employees or millennials, whether we like that term or not. I'll just say a changing value system in a workforce, a changing relationship between employer and employee. And what struck us at R Squared, all executives, all of us as managers love to analyze, we love data, right? Because it gives clarity and conviction. So we use Salesforce or something, right? You can go, I know I have 5 times pipeline coverage for this quarter, and what are my metrics? Or I know how my supply chain behaves, and I know every person, how long they're on every page of my website. But this huge, untapped, wonderful resource asset called employees, it's well, I don't know, I talk to Bob, or I walk around the office, or I send a survey, right? So there's this huge gap accelerated by remote work and gig work, where I think we as practitioners need to understand, and there's technology to do that now, right? Where you're hearing words like engagement, belonging, employee wellness. So the more we can apply technology to that and really understand it versus anecdotally, I think those are the companies that will survive and thrive, right? We can't do it the old way. You can't just hope everyone's okay out there, right? There's no management by walking around anymore. And that's where technology comes in, Candace.
Yeah.
I think there's some really interesting corollaries to that, because I know that one of the places I focus on where technology is working for the people issues is collaboration platforms. So I'm old enough in the business to remember when we first started seeing things like Trello. And now, of course, we've got, Google Suite and Microsoft Teams, and Dropbox has been around for a while. And so we're starting to apply some of these in this remote environment in a way where at least the work and the kind of work-focused collaboration is enabled.
Yeah, absolutely. So keeping on that theme, we've seen employee data analytics increasing in popularity even before the pandemic. We've actually integrated it into our system recently. But what trends are you seeing, and how companies are using data analytics differently now in this pandemic world than we saw, even just a few months prior? And is there a difference in how they're using it? With lifestyles such as single people living at home versus young families with children, or boomers versus millennials?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at that. Sorry if I cut you off there.
No, that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. I almost feel like in the old days or last generation, employee analytics were about the employees or on the employees. You know, if you think of Big Brother, I'm going to watch how many emails you're sending and make sure you're busy during the day, right? That's sort of the old command and control, old value system. In this collaborative remote way, what R Squared does is we use the digital communications to measure people's engagement and centrality. So frankly, I care not so much, Candace, if you're sending emails during the day or during the night. I want to know if you're engaged, or how many different departments are you talking to, right? So if we have this issue of, hey, accounting used to talk to lots of parts of the organization when it was in one building, and it was a very integrated, culturally happy, there was conviction and loyalty and attachment. Well, you can measure if those things are eroding, or if they're eroding for a group. And maybe, as you suggest, there's people with conditions at home that make it harder. And that's where a company needs to understand and focus. So one size doesn't fit all. So it's analytics for employees. Again, the most precious asset, the least understood, and the least technology has been applied to this part of companies, of who's connected, who's really doing the work. You know, we know these things intuitively. There's lots of individual contributors that add value well above their pay and title. Well, now you need to figure that out remotely, and you need to resource, you understand the leaders and laggards, replicate the good stuff, address the bad things, the things we do in person, but there's now no tool set to allow you to do that. So I think it's like this virtuous cycle, right? Understand the problems, address the problems. So yeah, it's an exciting time in a strange way, as we know that these sort of crises can create new models and technology, and I think that's happening.
Yeah. One of the things that's most exciting about being part of the venture capital community and dealing predominantly with venture capital backed or PE backed startups is how these companies are evolving to create products and services and platforms that are designed for exactly what Dan's talking about. So I have a particular client called Brightside, and they are a complete solution for employee financial care. So they contract with employers in order to provide counseling and services to their employees to reduce the stress levels, increase financial awareness, deal with financial issues in the employees' personal lives around their mortgages, their student loans, their credits, these kinds of things. And so, you know, we're seeing that happen more and more, where VC investors are looking to invest capital into companies that can begin to solve these human problems in unique and 2021 ways. And it is affecting, I think, the different generations differently. You know, all the research that I've seen is that for the millennials and the Gen Zers, this is much more of a critical and urgent issue. They're feeling much more stress and anxiety related to the separation and the remote aspects and the isolation. Some of the older generations are coping with it a little bit better. And so I think that these tools and processes that we develop as a community, you know, have to be able to differentiate around different human needs.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's almost counterintuitive, because you thought the millennials who've used technology, you know, or technology natives, unlike us older folks, it wouldn't have been that way. But yeah, no, it's really fascinating. All right. So obviously we've been using technology to onboard new employees for a number of years now. Are there any trends that you're seeing during this time to help integrate new employees and get them collaborating as soon as possible?
So we are seeing many more mentorship programs, which I think is on the people and the process side of the equation. We're of course leveraging technology so that paperwork, HR related, technical tasks are conducted remotely. We're creating libraries of, policies and white papers and examples of how our consultants do work with various engagements. We're assigning mentors. We're actually opening up situations where new employees spend the first few days either, with someone who's more experienced inside the company or shadowing on client engagements. It's a start. It's a long way from a finish.
Yeah, and maybe analogous, Andrea, we're trying to provide the data to support those efforts, right? So one of the old sayings, right? You can't affect what you can't measure, right? You can't change because it becomes anecdotal and it's a neat workshop and then you go back to real life. So we've all read a lot in the journal and Harvard Business Review lately, right, about diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging. That's very related to this onboarding to me, because one of the key thesis inside that is centrality and connectedness, right? So good company cultures that have low attrition, high productivity tend to have a very diverse employee mindset, as well as diverse employees. It's creative. There's a lot of cross-departmental connections, right? So it's great for marketing people to talk to people in engineering or finance, right? It's very fluid that way. And that's what we measure, right? So as part of the onboarding process, you can start to look at, wow, I hired this person or this group of 100, depending on the size company, and say, who is becoming connected and central, at the rate we measure high performing employees. And you can get those early signals and say, to your point, Andrea, though, the mentorship program, and sometimes it's a company mentor you need, sometimes it's a technology mentor, sometimes it's something else. So all these, we're seeing more employee internal support groups emerging. And again, I'd say the overwhelming theme is there's data out there to mine to bring as much rigor to employee health and productivity as there is a sales pipeline or your financial results. So again, our goal is to sort of pair those things up to see where to focus, because no company has unlimited time or budget to address all these, right? You want to address the real opportunities and real problems.
Yeah. And to your point, it's different. I mean, and obviously a 20 employee company, it's a lot easier to do, right? Than if you're a 100 employee company, people kind of fall through the cracks. So then it's really important that you train your managers to identify when, those things when they see that someone is not integrating or collaborating as much as, they maybe should, after time goes on. So fantastic. All right. We have time for one more question. So where did it go? So at Insperity, we believe that culture is one of the biggest impacts to the success of a business. And so how do you maintain and develop culture and continue to collaborate in this remote environment? What kind of processes, tools, team activities, creativity are you seeing out there?
So with Crayons, we've struggled with this. Not only were we 80% remote before the pandemic hit, but we're a bunch of accountants. So there's already a certain amount of, let me just sit in front of my laptop and get my work done. But conceptually, I think about this as stickiness. So when, we work with our clients that are website developers or in social media or online gaming, they spend a lot of time and energy around stickiness and how to get customers drawn to their sites and using their products and returning for return engagements. So we try to take some of those lessons and apply it inside our own work environment. And then one of the things that happened, and it just happened like last week, and I was so pleased. We as a company, we have been moving culturally. We've been making a transition from a founder in place company where all the decision making went through one individual to a much more participatory, collaborative style of management, where we wanted more and more people in the organization to participate and be part of generating that culture and create that stickiness. And we did a series of meetings, Zoom meetings last week, where different project teams were presenting results of different internal projects, and had the opportunity to be creative and to be innovative and to have their voices be heard, and to propose projects to the corporation that the corporation may fund, and take forward into work product going in the future. And we had about 60 people that were participating in these. And the feedback that came back was how comfortable everybody now felt on Zoom. And they felt like it created a level playing field. Like there were 60 peers who were all talking on Zoom. And so everyone could be comfortable participating, because it was no longer, oh, I can't go knock on the door of the SVP of sales, he's very scary. Or no, I can't go talk to the CFO, she's even scarier. And so some of these things are emerging out of the environment that truly can start to create a very positive kind of stickiness.
Absolutely. How about you, Dan?
Well, first, Andrea, hashtag hug an accountant. So for everyone on the call today, pick your favorite introverted accountant and give them a Zoom hug.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Hey, it's funny. We're small. We've sort of integrated this belonging fun thing into the team itself, into the work product. One idea, and maybe not everyone on the call's product that lends itself to this, but living in the world of artificial intelligence and natural language processing, there's a concern out there about bias, even unintended or hidden bias. So since we're Silicon Valley, obviously we're very multicultural, right? Of Asian, Indian, African American, Caucasian. So we do these interesting thumbs up, when we say, is this inclusive behavior? We have these blind votes and thumbs up, thumbs down, and then people can participate about, hey, from my point of view, say as a Chinese female, that's inappropriate because, or that wouldn't. So it's been a fun educational journey where the actual construction of the work product, the software platform, has been a way to include sort of a neat education. It's work, but it's really not. It's also really interesting as a way as getting to know each other, and it's created sort of not a forced environment, right? But just the way you would collaborate in person, and that's easily done remotely. So that's been really fun to watch and be part of. And it's what we talk about, Andrew, of a certain generation. I'll talk to you and me on this, right? We have a certain set of values, experiences, behaviors, collaborations, expectations of what's scary and not. And you said it earlier, Candace, some of this is inverting itself, where you would think maybe the older generation wouldn't be as adept collaborating, but what we maybe have is a home office, and we don't have kids or roommates that are homeschooling, right? So you're adaptable in a different way. So we're learning all those dials and levers of what matters, what causes problems, how to best measure and support. And there's going to be great companies and cultures in a new environment. We have to learn how to, measure and understand it, execute it. So it's, again, I'd say it's sort of a fascinating new journey if you're open to it.
Yeah, and there are so many
Absolutely.
benefits. We talked about losing the commute and the suit, but
Mhm.
there's also, this arc on the social contract where, when you're in a more flexible work environment, you're able to be more of an individual. You're able to be more creative. You're able to bring more of your whole self to the role, to the job, to the company, to the client, to the customer. I think as people start to get used to that and step back to look at some of those benefits, they may find it's a much more rewarding experience than it was before.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we got on this call, right? About how just the backgrounds that everybody has, behind them, if it's not corporate, kind of tells a little story about that person a little bit. So, yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you so much, both of you. Stay on for some Q&A later, but now we'll kick it back over to Len.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Candace. Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Dan. So yeah, along the lines of culture, why don't we dig in a little bit more into that? One of the things I've noticed, obviously, is certainly I'm on time every day. And let's face it, no one's really calling in sick right now, right? So I'd like to kick my first question over to Eric. How have you continued to maintain your culture in this remote environment? And Eric, please, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about yourself and a little bit about PeerSpace, that would be great.
Sure. Hi, my name is Eric Schaup. I'm the CEO of PeerSpace. It's an online marketplace for venue rental. So people will rent our venues by the hour for meetings, events, or media productions. And so as you can imagine, through all of this COVID period, a lot of companies are rethinking their real estate, whether or not they should have a lease at all, as people are loving working from home. So we've taken a great interest in this topic of the future of work. When it comes to culture, when people talk about culture, I think they're really talking about two separate things. One is values, right? So what are the norms of a company? What are the cultural values of a company? And those should be established whether you're working from home or you're working in the office. Like those are things that are kind of immutable. I think what's important about reinforcing values in this time frame is about it and a little bit more formal. So you have to make sure that in your communication, you're highlighting and praising the people who have behavior that represent your values. When it comes to onboarding, somebody mentioned this earlier, it's important to be formal and deliberate about sharing the values of the company, because you simply don't have all those opportunities in the office to share those values bit by bit. So that's part one. Part, which is, I think, really what's up top of mind for people as everyone's working from home. So we ran a survey recently, a nationwide survey to employees of companies of all sizes, as we were trying to figure out how future of work was going to happen. And we asked them about their experience of working from home and what they wanted to do with the office going forward. 80% of them said, as a result of working from home during COVID, that they had a more positive view of working remotely. And that 70% had now started considering moving to a different city from where they had previously worked, which was really amazing. But the most important part, I think, that's relevant to this topic is that 70% of them also said they felt they needed to be with their colleagues once a month in person to be effective. So I just think that there's going to be, with all the technology in the world, there's no getting away from the fact that we are animals. we are creatures who want to interact with each other in person. And so while it may not be realistic to do that on a monthly basis, I'm of the view that a healthy company is going to put a priority on getting people together in real life, whether that's weekly, monthly, quarterly, or annually. And that's going to be an essential to our workplace going forward and our culture.
Excellent, Eric. That's a great point. And I know, Ron, you spoke about sort of this geo-remote workforce and, Eric's point about 80% of the people moving out of the area. Could you share with us what your company's doing now with this aspect of work? And please also, Ron, if you could speak a little bit about Keep Trucking and what you guys do.
Sure. Thank you. Happy to be on. Keep Trucking. So we are primarily a fleet management company for trucking across the country, as well as a freight marketplace. And we're a global company where more than half of our employees are in Pakistan. And, our culture before was very much in office. And, with COVID happening, you're used to your previous norms. Now with COVID, you have to go fully remote. And the infrastructure in Pakistan wasn't as great as the US. So trying to make sure everyone's connected. And as far as functions, we have sales, we have customer support and engineering all in Pakistan. So it's really vital to get them up and running. So we actually had to go through a lot to get that to happen. But actually the transition was better than we expected. And, similar to what Eric was saying, we did surveys as well too. And 80% of the people value working from home and would prefer working from home than an office environment. However, that social connectedness or that social interaction is still missing. So when you bring people on board, a lot of people during this pandemic have never met anyone personally. So you do that over Zoom calls, you try to have more mentorship, you try to have more different things. But when you have that geo difference, it's really important that your managers have like stand-ups with the entire team. And I know like Andrea in the first panel said that, more and more people feel like they're more connected to their work because they're all in an equal playing field, working from home, talking on one screen. And I think that this is going to be a new norm that people are going to have to understand and work through. And compensation is another key piece that is a part of this too, that we're allowing people to work wherever they are in the US, or they can work somewhere else. And so in the future, I can see a scenario where you hear a lot of companies that have these geo differences where you can move to wherever you want, but you're going to be paid based on the local salary. I have like a counter view to that is probably more of a secret sauce to retain and keep people engaged. My thought is like, if you're in San Francisco and you want to move to Iowa, keep your San Francisco salary, but you're not going to get raises until that market allows you to get raises or merit increases or other things. And I think that's powerful because you can leave to go to a role in a different company, but that salary is going to be different. And I think it works the opposite way too. If you're in Iowa and come to San Francisco, you keep your Iowa salary, but you participate in the catch up in compensation on a regular basis. And so I think this is kind of a new way of keeping that engagement and retention high. So a lot to say. And one other plug before I turn it back is I'm a former CPA that's a recovering and been in HR world for a long time. So I have a lot of empathy for both sides.
Well, you're certainly not alone there, Ron. I too am a recovering accountant. But anyway, that's another story. Well, thanks a lot for that perspective. And then Cal, would love to hear your perspective on how you're maintaining your culture in this remote environment and some of the challenges around sort of the millennial workforce. I know Andrea alluded to some of that earlier, but I know you had some great perspective on that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for having us. Yeah, my company is Elevate 360. We provide transportation services and consulting to various tech companies in Silicon Valley. And the funny part was, or I should say, the ironic part was, for the near past, all we've been trying to do is to reduce traffic and to encourage people to work from home. And now everybody wants to work from home. Like you said, 80% of the people have no issues working from home. And to kind of allude to exactly what Candace and Dan were saying is the fact that I was very surprised that, when we did our employee surveys as well, I was very surprised that our older folks, our experienced folks, they were the ones that were more willing to work from home. I was really expecting, like Candace said, that the younger folks were going to be the ones that were going to work from home, our Gen Zs, our millennials, because when they show up to work, it feels like they don't want to talk to anybody anyways. And so the fact is that now you can work from home and not talk to anybody, but they're the ones that want more of that social interaction. One big thing, and Andrea pointed that out perfectly. I think one of the big things that we took for granted was the passive passage of knowledge and information that went from our experienced workforce to our newer workforce, right? And that alludes to when you have onboarding, when you bring people on, like Eric talked about culture, right? Culture is, it's not just taught, but it's seen and felt and heard. And when you don't, in this environment, you don't get to see and feel and hear that culture. And if you do, a lot of times it's a plug that comes from, our managers or our supervisors, our VPs. They're the ones that are plugging, they're the ones that are pushing, quote unquote, the company agenda. And so the biggest challenge we faced was, okay, how do we maintain and manage that culture? How do we ensure our employees are going to continue to possess and continue to display that culture every single day, even working in a remote environment? And I think, to everybody's point, I think we did that just by ensuring that we were their support line. I think it's something that we cannot forget at this point, is the fact that us as owners, managers, VPs, SVPs, etc., C-levels, our job is, at this point, we've become a flatline hierarchy. No longer are we defined by the corner office, defined by the door, defined by the lock. Now you're in a meeting, people call on you just like they call on a colleague of theirs. You're their colleague. You can't come and tell them, well, do you know you're talking to the you can't say that. You never could say that before, but it was implied before. Now it's completely gone out the door. And I think that, the flip side of that, that's not a disadvantage. It's almost an advantage, because now you can lend that ear. You can actually have the time to talk to your employees, to actually have the time to imbibe that company culture. It's actually a little bit more natural, because you're listening to them. A big thing that we're doing is, we have organized meetings, of course, 3, 4, 5 days a week, but then we specifically carve out some time for our employees to collaborate with each other, to meet with each other and talk to each other. And we ask them, do you want management present? Sometimes they don't want management present. They just want to, sit and whine about life. And that's absolutely fine, because those are the little, the cooler, water cooler talks. Those are the ones we've taken for granted. They're gone. Now it's you work, or you're dealing with your kids at home. And like me, you just want to go work, but you can't.
Right. Exactly. No, it's such an interesting dynamic. Let's see. So, Jill, is there anything you'd like to add around culture?
Yeah, I think the overarching theme for all of us is it's all about communication, right? Because culture is people, right? It's not inside of a building, it's the people. That's why you can use the same tools, you can use the same technologies when you're at X company and at Y company, but it feels completely different because it's all carried in the people. And I think that this pandemic, when the future of work showed up on March 13th, just taught us how important communication really is to everything. And so we had to learn how to be more communicative. We might have been that manager that was in the corner office that was there, but never really mingled. And our people didn't worry about it too much because they knew we were there, but we just didn't, mix and mingle. But now that we're not there anymore and we don't know where you are, it creates all sorts of new anxieties and that sort of thing. So I think really the theme for me out of what everybody has said is just around that communication piece, how critical that is. Because really, as leaders of organizations, we hire people to do the tactical things, right? But we're supposed to be removing the obstacles for them so that they can do those things. And if we're not communicating with them, we don't know what those obstacles are. We don't know what issues they're having. And so just elevating our communication game, I think, is what's so critical. I have a little insight too, just before we get off that topic of the Gen Zs. I think one of the reasons that they're struggling so much has a lot to do with time management, because this is a group that hasn't had a chance to kind of bake in some of their processes and some of the ways to work. We all feel comfortable. We're doing it from home, but we know that, kind of how long it takes us to do this or how much of that we need to do. But they didn't have that experience. And like about the time they came into the office, we ripped them back out and sent them home. So I think that's another part of their struggle, is just building in some structure so that they can participate at their fullest. Because I think distractions are a big deal to that group, right? And so if we can bake in some structure, I think that would help them a lot.
Excellent. Yeah, I can speak for myself. I love it when I get a call from my manager to say, hey, what's going on? Because I'm so extroverted, and being in this kind of environment, it's like I need to talk to people. It's such a motivator and a lifeline for me. So I welcome calls from my manager to say, hey, what's going on, Excellent. Okay, great. And then another sort of topic around this remote environment is sort of not really the management, but more the tone setting, how you as leaders drive that cultural and performance component. So, how is it that you guys can get your teams on the same page? Why don't we start with you, Eric? Do you have some thoughts on how you can sort of motivate your team and get everyone sort of singing from the same tune?
Yeah, I think there are some things about this period that are not different, right? People want to work for a company that is up to something, right? That there's a mission that they believe in that's making a difference in the world. Two, they want to see progress. You want to see that their collective efforts, their individual efforts are propelling the company towards that mission. And they want to see there's opportunity for growth for them as an individual. Those have not changed. So I think that in this remote period, we should be making sure we're deliberate about establishing goals for them, establishing goals for the company, communicating the mission of the company, and making sure that our employees have a career path. So those really haven't changed. We just need to be really deliberate about it. I think that the part that has changed is, and I guess we said this a couple times, is just we need to be really communicative about where we're going and why, and we need to create these opportunities to communicate those things, because we are not going to be able to do it in the hallway. And we're not going to do it in those small, 6-person meetings on an afternoon. We have to be deliberate about making time to communicate these things. And for us, we have had to be more deliberate about doing employee surveys. I don't think there's any magic to that, about just doing pulse checking to see where everybody's at. So we're speaking into where they are, because as Cal was saying, we just can't pick up where people are at from the water cooler, right? There's not, not getting the same body language. So I think we just had to be deliberate about all of those things in a way that maybe we would have been maybe lackadaisical about it in the pre-COVID period.
Got it. Great points, Eric. And Cal, how do you set the tone for your organization?
Yeah, I realized that the biggest challenge that we faced was it feels like we're in Groundhog Day. Right? It feels like every day is the same. You wake up, suddenly the weekends are gone. I mean, I know there's all these memes and jokes on the internet that no longer Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's just yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And that's what we feel the most. And so one of the things that we've started doing is we've definitely created progress plans for all our employees, and we've made bite-sized progresses, right? You don't want to put this, the 6-month, the quarterly vision anymore, because that's gone. The quarters don't matter because you just get so inundated with life and the stresses outside of life. And then the demotivation comes in, and then you're just cycling so much more. You're spending so much time and effort, basically, quote, walking people off the ledge, basically. So what we're doing is we're giving people bite-sized wins, right? Bite-sized goals. And as soon as they finish it, we're really going out of our way to, reward them. Not financially exactly, but more of a motivational reward, more of a interactive reward. The other thing that we're doing is, again, like I said earlier, the ability for them, for our employees themselves to actually communicate with each other. Our meeting frequencies have increased significantly. And, again, we're definitely compensating for the lack of physical, interaction and activity and all that, transfer of information that used to happen that we didn't even think about, didn't even know that was happening. Now we're taking all of that into account. Mentorship is a very big thing for us, because that is truly what has, that's truly, literally it's doubled our engagement, because now you have somebody that's responsible for somebody else. You have somebody that's held accountable to and for, and that has helped a lot in terms of our overall progress. But I think at the end of the day, it's just, I think everybody just wants to get out. I mean, that's the bottom line. It's the fact that it wants to get out. Up in California, when we had the wildfires here and our smoke quality was bad, that was probably the toughest time that we faced, because you can't go out, you're stuck at home, you're literally, there's nothing to do, there's nothing you can think about. we used to jam trainings and learnings and lessons and meetings down people's throats. And you could just see people were just looking at us sideways going, will you stop talking? Because I'm about to tell you something very unkosher. But fortunately with that gone, now we're kind of back to normal, and we're moving. Slow baby steps is what we call it. So.
Right. Well, that's so critical too. I'm sure that your organization appreciated the fact that you were present and you were there for them, because I can certainly appreciate having that lifeline. It's almost like you're being connected to you, or the leadership is really helping you kind of bridge this tough time. So
Jill mentioned such a valid thing, which is again something that we took so for granted, which is we assumed that the millennials and the Gen Zs knew how to use this technology because they were born in it. And I can't tell you how many times we had employees show up to a meeting with no shirt on. I mean, it was just like, whoa, we don't want to see this. And they'd look at us like, what? My camera's on? Oh, I don't, And so we spend so much time training people on the basics. And of course, it was good because it was a progress metric, right? It was like, hey, let's show you how to overcome, your internet goes down 17 times a day. That's okay. How are you going to communicate to us that it's going to go down, and then how you still get your work done? How do you find alternatives to the technology that we have in place? So it's been a lot of learning, but it's, to Jill's point, exactly that we take for granted millennials and Gen Zs know what they're doing.
Right.
Maybe not.
Right. Well, that's great perspective. Let's see, and then Ron, certainly you're with a larger organization. How do you and your team set the tone for the rest of your company?
And a lot of the points that Cal and Eric talked about, we do as well too. But I think a deeper level for us is more about the manager. The manager is the key for everything in a larger organization when you're global and distributed and so forth. So training managers how to keep teams motivated, how to engage with the teams. One of the things that we've done really well is have stand-ups either daily or every other day. And the way that we curated those stand-ups were the first 15 minutes, talk about what's going on in the world. How are people feeling? Because, not only did we have to go remote, but with all the social injustice issues, with the fires, with the election and everything, I mean, people are feeling trapped in their home environment. Either they're by themselves, so they don't interact with others, or they have kids, or everyone has their own unique situation. So make sure you give time for that. And then the rest of your daily stand-up or every other day stand-up is more about the goals and objectives, because people feel aligned with those goals. They feel like they know the work that they need to do, and they feel on par with everyone else because everyone is in the same situation. It's that employee well-being that the first group talked about as well too. That is so critical in this day and age, that candidates and employees really value and really are going to expect that they take care of the whole person. It's more the mental, it's more the health, it's more the financial well-being. So what we did is we also enacted programs where people can have like their own financial advisor to talk about like what's going on in the situation, how they can preserve money, what does equity look like, what does it mean for them? Also, the mental well-being is so critical. It used to be a stigma about a year or two ago. Now it's expected that I need an objective outlet that's really going to talk to me, doesn't understand the work that I'm doing, but they understand the environment I'm in. And people have really resonated with that. And then the other big theme that, people are worried about, that now that you're not together, you're working alone, or you're not working as effectively in an office, how can you be innovative? And one of the big things for me was developing a program for the company that talked about innovation. And so innovation is not just like, what's the next big idea? It's like making it simple that, every person is a leader of their own world and their own role. So take a look at your role now. Take a step back, not just do your day-to-day, but how can you do your day-to-day more effective? Can you use tools? Can you use different things? And so we've provided lunch and learns and other types of environments. And even we're going to have a hackathon coming up where everyone will participate in that. But I think innovation and productivity go hand in hand. And if you give tools to people that they can innovate, that really has resonated with people and will go a long way to ensuring engagement and productivity in this type of environment.
Right, if I can interject right there, but that's the secret sauce to employee engagement, right? Giving them the tools, empowering them to do these sorts of things, and then to be able to opine or create into the business that makes the business better tomorrow than it was today. So, I mean, that's employee engagement in a nutshell. Yeah.
100%.
I thought it was all about the Friday happy hours. Is that
Well,
not?
that helps, right? Yeah.
That's an add-on.
Okay, got it. All right, good. All right, well, great. This is great information. Now I'd like to sort of move to sort of the hiring process. You know, we talked, Candace's team spoke about onboarding, very critical component, but the actual hiring now is really shifted. And, you know, I'd just love to get perspective from Eric, Cal, and Ron, and certainly Jill about how you're managing this process. What are some of the nuances where that personal interaction is so critical? You know, when you're trying to get a feel for somebody, it's really tough in a Zoom type of interview. So I'm just curious how sort of your teams get around that. Why don't we just start with you, Ron?
Sure. I mean, I think the process is more efficient being remote and where you have interviews on Zoom and so forth. And what we're trying to do, I mean, that values alignment is so crucial. So we have questions that are aligned to our values that every part of each interview has these questions so you can assess, are they going to fit the culture that we've developed and what we're trying to maintain? So I think from that perspective, it's been pretty efficient. And now we're making hiring decisions without actually seeing people for especially the broad-based roles. And so, I mean, we're taking a bet. I mean, we've onboarded probably about 300 to 400 people since we've been remote. And the biggest issue that we found was making sure you have a mentor for that individual within their team, but then also how can you meet other people in the team so they learn more about the company? So we've enacted some coffee chats using Donut that we select, you know, a new hire to match up with random people in the organization so that they can understand individuals. So that's been one thing that has been working well. But for more senior hiring, we do most of the interviews over Zoom or Hangout or whatever the tool is. But then before we make a final decision, we do want to have a face-to-face. So we would fly someone in, or we try to have like a social distance coffee or dinner with them. Because if you're an exec joining this environment, you still have to understand how you work, how you think, and how you're going to operate as a collective unit. And it's really hard to really you know, have that over Zoom without having any of that detailed social interaction. So we're seeing for executives that we're trying to do more of that. And also within this DE&I world where, you know, inclusivity is so crucial for us, we're making all exec hires that you have to have, you know, a woman or underrepresented minority in the final slate of candidates. And that's actually led to more diverse hiring for us. So there's some good that's come out of this. There's still some wonkiness in terms of not how do you onboard people in this type of environment when you're not in an office together and training them like they would get in the previous environment. But I think there's some areas we can improve, but still good takeaways from it.
Great. Thank you very much, Ron. Eric, how's the hiring been for your organization?
Yeah, so our company has hired remotely for years. So it hasn't been really a big change for us. We've always sought to hire the best candidates wherever they were. And our experience in that was that, as Ron was saying, you know, it's efficient to do it over Zoom. And I would argue that it leads to introduction of less bias in the hiring process, because it forces you to get down to, okay, what do I actually need this person to do? What are the actual experiences they need to bring to the table, instead of all the other stuff that we all absorb as humans, you know, from body language and so forth. So I think that that selection process has always been positive for us doing it remotely. Challenge has been around onboarding, which I think it was Andrea who brought up first today. You know, this is an opportunity during the onboarding period to establish the norms of the company and start talking about the culture. And so that has been more challenging in our past. We have certainly onboarded people remotely, but it's always been important to get the entire team together at some point, whether it's quarterly or every 6 months, so we can actually get to meet those new employees in person and really get them to get a sense for what the team feels like. And I agree with Ron that for executive hires, people are going to be really shaping the culture of the company and the feel. It's important that you meet those people in person. I don't think there's any substitute for that because they have the opportunity to positively or negatively shape the feeling in the company. And so it's important to establish that they're going to be the right kind of culture carriers for the company.
Excellent. So it sounds like more of a skill-based hiring approach as opposed to that soft skill side when it comes to sort of this type of medium for hiring.
I think it focuses you on the things that really matter to getting the job done,
Right.
you know, more so than all the other inputs that we naturally take in as humans.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Eric. Cal, your perspective.
Yeah, I feel, you know, definitely, you know, I have to echo what Ron said. We were already a very diverse company. We had, you know, we were always blind in terms of that. But now this is positively blind, right? Now, literally, we're not. I mean, we even actually had to throw out a part of the qualification requirement. Because we're blessed because, you know, of course, in the Bay Area, there's a massive shortage of jobs. So when you post something out there, you get, you know, the most qualified candidates you can. And so I think the toughest part has been for us is exactly what, you know, Eric and Ron alluded to, which is the fact that you know, it's not about the qualification of the candidate, who's going to fit our culture the best.
Right.
And that has always been the challenge. You know, that was always a challenge when you're not meeting somebody face to face. We used to have a few rounds of interviews. Our first round was always online because it was just easy. But now that we've replaced that second round where we actually meet somebody, you know, you press flesh, you look at them, you talk to them, you get a feel for those natural tendencies kind of step in where you're like, okay, and most of the time they're positive, sometimes they could be negative. Here, that the chance of negativity is gone. Now you're just purely looking at somebody through a screen, what they did, what they're bringing to the table. We have gone into having a lot more personality-based tests just because we would like to know, and again, those tests are more for just understanding somebody fits with the culture of our company. If somebody has the same belief system that we have, and this is not religious beliefs or anything, but these are just work ethic beliefs, things that they understand what we're going through. They echo our vision is something that I call it, which is when we explain our vision to them, they must be inspired by that vision, by that mission. Because if they're not, then they're never going to be excited working for us. Now they're just looking for a job, not a career or not an opportunity. And so with the online basis, with the online hiring, that has not shifted immensely. To Eric's point, the toughest part for us has been the mentorship, is the fact that before we used to always put a mentor with an employee in the field, and it was a great bond development that happened, and that ensured success for both the mentor and the employee. That's gone now because now the mentor is as cold as the screen that I'm staring at. Right. So you're like, wait a minute, you know, what is this person being honest? The trust doesn't get built fast enough for us between the mentor and the employee. And the way we're countering that right now to some success is that we're encouraging the mentor and the employee to have one-on-ones, to actually have conversations. We're trying to, if they feel like socially distancing, we're not encouraging versus discouraging that, because safety is a big thing. But we do want that employee, the mentor-mentee relationship to build and develop and not stop just because of technology. And once that happens, I feel like, you know, then we can get the next leap. And that point, why hire in person ever again?
Right. That's a great point, Cal. Well, this is very good perspectives all around. It is a good learning for me around that skill-based component, and then getting more down to the work, and then, hey, is this going to fit? Are you aligned? And then off you go, and then see where you are in a few months to see if the hiring, you know, that hire's working out. Jill, any quick perspective there?
Just, I would say that it brings home the point that your recruiting really starts way before the person shows up for the interview, right? It's about that talent attraction and how you can start to build in some of those things that you're going to need to do once you onboard them, all the way back up to the front when you're establishing your brand, who you are, and what your value propositions are for potential hires. Because if you start to do that right, and those right people are seeking you out, and you're attracting those right people, makes that work on the back end so much easier, right? So I think it just shows us how important the entire process is, not just that Zoom interview, but all the stuff that came before it.
Excellent. All right. Well, great. This is excellent information for our audience here. Let's see. I think we have a question right now. We've got a few more. I mean, as long as our panelists can stay, please stay as long as possible. We have one question that just came in, and again, feel free to use the chat or the Q&A. We have a question around how do you keep millennials engaged? Let's see, why don't we start with Cal, and if anyone else wants to jump in after Cal, we'll go from there.
Yeah, no, great. That's a great question. The biggest thing that we've understood with millennials, just based on our surveys and based on our conversations with them, is that at least in our case, a lot of millennials have gone back home. They're living at home. They've decided to stay at home, or if they weren't at home, they've decided to go home or be around family. And so what happens with millennials is now they have a little bit of distraction, because like Dan alluded to it earlier, I feel like, the more experienced folks, they have a room, they have an isolated space. The millennials, they may or may not have that. The biggest thing we're doing with millennials is we're keeping them engaged by constantly ensuring that they're doing learnings, they're doing education programs, where we're offering them a big plethora, especially on our portal Insperity. The learning management system in Insperity is amazing. So we're giving them even things that are not related or created by our company. We're just giving them the whole gamut to go out there and definitely learn and engage. And the big thing that we've learned with millennials is that they tend not to stick with one job. They don't have that mentality of that 25 years, gold Rolex watch at the end of it, that kind of stuff, right? They're looking to swap next job. Right now, there's no job to go to. So we've kind of got a nice capture on them. And so what we're doing for that capture is we're truly helping them evolve as individuals, as employees. And I feel like that has helped us the most in keeping them more engaged and more interested, and correspondingly, they're also buying into our company values, because it is a value for all of us as employees. But to be able to keep an employee engaged, to be able to keep especially millennial engaged, evolving and learning, that makes them feel like they're actually not just contributing, but we are contributing to them. Mm-hmm. And that's been helpful for us.
So it's you're putting in, you're investing in them, and then that investment is reciprocated. Yeah,
exactly. And our investment in them is not, we're not expecting a return. We never were. You never expect a return from your employees, right? You put in an investment into your employees, hoping for a return, and right, hoping that they stick around long enough to give you a return. And if they don't, they don't. I think with the millennials, my mindset was originally they were never going to stick around long enough where we were expecting long-term returns from them or anything like that. But the data has proven that right now they're actually more happy to engage, because if you invest in them, they're more happy to engage with you long-term.
Excellent.
I 100% agree with that. I just wanted to add one thing, is that this investment in employees is helping them reskill, upskill, so that maybe they have more fungibility even within an organization. So instead of having that up or out mentality, you can be in one org and then your skills might be needed in a different org. And in the past, you might not be aware that someone has those skills, or this opportunity presents itself for people around the whole company. I think that's very, very powerful. So unfortunately, I have to run, but it was great being here, and good luck with the rest of the conversation.
Great. Thanks very much, Ron.
I'm actually gonna have to leave as well, but thank you, Len and Candace, for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate your time as well. We have one more question here, and it's related to fixed costs of office space. What are employees doing to reduce their fixed costs of office space as employees continue to work from home? Any sort of strategies that are being implemented by some of you folks?
More on the negative side. I mean, we've tried with a variety of our clients to get them out of their leases. And, when you sign a contract, the terms are pretty specific. And the state of California certainly has come in and chimed in on the part of the landholders, and basically said that, they don't consider the pandemic a force majeure. So they don't consider it an acceptable exit clause out of a contract. So if you can't negotiate something with your landlord, you're kind of stuck with that contract.
Yeah, something that we've done, which I'm not recommending or advising this to anybody else, but we had an office space that we were using quite heavily, and we realized we're not going to go back to it. One of the things that we did was we actually reached out to other partner companies, other partner vendors, people that we knew in our network, in LinkedIn, in Insperity as well. And we asked if we wanted to co-share that space, because literally nobody needs the space. All we need is a mailing address or a desk or some kind of, a physical presence, which nobody's going to be physically present at. And so that's something that we did. Instead of going out and going and getting yourself a lease, why don't we sublease some of our, because like Andrea said, getting out of a contract at this point is next to impossible. And especially because landlords know nobody's going to be able to take that contract once you leave. So a year ago, it was no issue. They were kicking you out. Now they're like, no, holding on, and they're making sure you don't leave. So that's one thing that we've done, is we've subleased some of our space out to smaller companies, smaller vendors, people that we knew, people that we trusted, and that allowed us to save a little bit of cost.
Yeah, and just give Eric Shoup and PeerSpace a little plug there, because that's what they do, right? So if you want somebody to kind of manage that process for you and you don't have to do it, talk to PeerSpace.
Yeah.
He hopped off right at the wrong time.
Exactly, should have read that question.
So an idea that sparks, though, is could you provide the space to a nonprofit, and would your tax guys consider that a charitable deduction?
Oh, that's a great point.
That's thank you. Do you have free advice for us right now, or should we wait?
I may ask our tax partner.
Excellent. Okay. Well, great. I don't believe there are any more questions at this point. Candace, Jill, Andrea, Dan, and Cal, super appreciative of your time and your insights. This has been a great webinar, and looking forward to the next one with you all.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thanks,
much,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Lynn. Take care.